Thank you, everybody, for joining us in your afternoon as well as your morning. And I'm excited to be able to talk about Confluence and the IBM ELM suite. So a little bit of an intro for some of you who might not know us. So Sodius Willard, we're an international tool vendor. So we've been working with teams on tools for the last 20 years. We have offices here in Detroit, but we also have offices in France and Germany as we support our global teams in aerospace, defense, and automotive. And our goal here is really to be able to make your development of products easier. And so what we're going to do today, we'll be more demo focused. I'm an engineer, so I always love to be able to see tools work more than people talk about them. So, but we're going to give a little introduction to why we're doing an OSLC solution for Confluence, demo it, and obviously we can take some Q&A and be able to understand what your specific needs are after you've seen the demo, as well as what other questions we can dive into. So it's going to be a good exploration of what we're doing and what we want to touch on. So um, for me, I've been using the IBM ELM suites for almost 13 years now. I think I first deployed it in 2009. There's some great things about both of these tools, and there's great things about working with engineering teams that are using these tools. And as we've done tool development, as we've done consulting over the last decade, we see distinct needs and capabilities of these tools. So the IBM ELM suite, obviously, it talks about being insightful engineering at enterprise scale. So it's something that's robust for our large aerospace and automotive teams to be able to capture requirements, implement their designs, and be able to make sure that they're tested and do reporting. So as we do things like ASPICE or ISO 26262, we need to show traceability. And it's very great for doing formal things and being able to capture formal definitions and do great things like version management and enterprise configuration management. It's fabulous at this. What we also see as we are users of Confluence as well as many of our customers, Confluence is a little bit different. Confluence allows you to be able to create things very rapidly, very informally, share things very easily, and be able to rapidly generate and share content with other people. And what we really want to do is take a look at how those pieces fall together, because when we look at these two, it's not like one can replace the other. So when we're working with things like IBM ELM, we have a challenge when we start working with people that are not part of our technical team in terms of sharing information. We have issues in terms of doing trivial changes or small things that are informal and how to be able to share that, as well as the rigor for doing content creation. If every time that I wanted to share just some early ideas and had to create a requirements module and requirements content, sometimes that's a little bit more formal than just preparing for a meeting that I might have tomorrow that I want to share just some basic ideas and share some thoughts and share some guidance. Um, on the other hand, Confluence has gaps. It has gaps in terms of being able to share in there engineering source information. So we know people have copied data in there. The informality of content makes it difficult for me to maintain over time. How I update, how I do version management is informal. And so when I want to go retrieve what we were working on a year ago or what was in a release, it's not necessarily the right place to be able to go find that. And when we get into some of our teams that are doing formal work and need to have formal security and audits of who has access to information, that gets problematic. And it's especially problematic when they still want to use Confluence and they're copying engineering data into that. So what we want to do is we want to provide that balance. We want to find a way to be able to blend between those. And so we want to make sure that when we collaborate on these formal assets, it becomes easier and easier to share that information, but it still remains under control. And that's really our goal with Confluence. We want to create a bridge. We want to bridge that engineering data to the shareable environment in Confluence. And the whole goal here is to be able to make teams more and more productive. We want to have people access the information they need. We want it easy for them to be able to access that. And we want to make sure that we're not replicating information, which is how we get into this OSLC standard. So I know we have Confluence users. I know we have IBM ELM users behind the scenes of IBM and help develop this OSLC standard, which is a way to be able to link between different repositories, have semantics on that link information, and how tools can integrate. We don't always look at that as we work between DOORS Next and EWM or EWM and ETM, but behind the scenes, that's what OSLC is doing. And that's what we've leveraged when we used added OSLC content to Jira and be able to enable it to work with tools like DOORS Next. We use this OSLC standard. What we're doing now is providing that same capability into Confluence. And the great thing about that, it provides all these capabilities we want. We want to be able to link between different repositories. We want to be able to manage different versions of those artifacts on those links. And we want to be able to work in enterprise environments, meaning we have authentication and audit controls, we have distributed connected topologies, we have all these things, and this standard allows us to be able to do that. So if you hear me talk about OSLC or wonder why we call it OSLC Connect, it's because we're creating an implementation of the standard into these Atlassian tools so we can have that connectivity. And so what is OSLC Connect for Confluence? Really, it's an extension of the Confluence capabilities to our Atlassian implementation for Confluence. So it's an approved plugin in the marketplace that's available. It allows us to have this server collaboration. So how does Confluence talk to EWM or DOORS Next, any of these other tools? It provides that Atlassian look and feel and experience and configuration controls into how that actually takes place. But it really is about how do we make an opportunity for your organization to reuse assets within Confluence from your engineering tools. Make sure you still have secure access. So we'll show you how any of the artifacts that we're linking to from Confluence are actually being dynamically brought in, happening under your own user ID. So only the right people can see that information. And it's simple to deploy and manage. So all those things are what we want to do. We want to be able to take all your IBM ELM information and make it accessible and manageable within Confluence where you want to share information. So that way you enter it once, you can use it in many different places, which is really the whole goal of OSLC. So what are the types of things that we're talking about being able to make available in Confluence? These are going to be things like EWM tasks and stories, or our DOORS Next specifications, our ETM test plans, or Rhapsody model diagrams even. So any of the content that you're creating in these OSLC tools within ELM, you're going to have access to be able to bring into Confluence and be able to make accessible and make visible so that people, as they enter into your Confluence pages, can view that content, but also they can navigate to that content. And so we get a seamless environment back and forth. When we talk about OSLC, what we're talking about is linking artifacts. And so you'll see this capability. These are kind of some screenshots, and we'll live going through those demos. But you'll be able to preview content within Confluence from your engineering enterprise and be able to have more accessibility to that. And that's really the point that we want to be able to make visible to you, as well as we're trying to introduce the Atlassian experience while we're doing that. So it still stays familiar to your Confluence users, and they get the most access and most ability to leverage that information that you've stored formally within IBM ELM. And so we're going to do a live demo here, and we'll walk through some scenarios. I'll point out some things. As Alexi said, this is a recording that will be available, so you'll be able to go back and look through it if you have questions, as well as you can share it with others to be able to point to them that they need to take a look at this. But we're going to take a look at some pragmatic things, how it interacts in the enterprise so that our Atlassian admins understand how that works, and how you might use it. Now, Confluence is very flexible, so I'm going to go through some usage, but we're only going to focus on out-of-the-box Confluence usage. Everybody customizes Confluence to their own needs, but it'll give you an idea how you might leverage it within your organization to meet your needs. And so with that, I'll go ahead and switch over, and we'll get to our live demo here. And so let's start off with some admin things first, and then we'll go ahead and show you really how to be able to leverage this. So first and foremost, like what I said, this is a plugin that's available in the Atlassian marketplace. You can see this is just an installed plugin within my Confluence deployment here. So you can go ahead, search the Atlassian marketplace to find the Sodius Wheeler OSLC Connect for Confluence, download it, try it, install it, and be able to do trials from there. And we're there to be able to help you. Now, in terms of how does it connect in your enterprise, what goes on with OSLC? is connections to other repositories. And so you see here, these are all the friends that my Confluence application understands and can talk to. So there's some different ELM instances here. And there's a Windchill instance and a Jira instance and some Polarian instances here as well. This should give you an idea why OSLC is so powerful. I can be able to connect to multiple different engineering repositories within my enterprise and be able to make that information accessible. Now, what we don't want is that every project can go off and do anything that they want and connect to anything we want. So then we also have within your Confluence spaces the ability to be able to identify which artifacts and which projects you want to connect to. We don't want to have to go search everywhere. And so you'll see as we do this demo, I have a space here. It has connections to mainly the IBM ELM suite, but a couple other repositories as well. And we'll show you that as we navigate through here. The whole point here is to show how ELM can connect in here. So you'll see connections for requirements into my ARM system for getting modules and separate requirements. You'll see EWM for some of my change tasks. You'll see architecture management coming from EWM as well. So some Rhapsody model content as well as some testing content. And so that's the intention. What we want to do as the owner of a particular space is shape what those content can be produced and what content can be introduced into my Confluence pages. And that's the intention. Now, the other thing to take a look at here, and I'll go actually to a different web browser to be able to share this with you, is the nice thing about using OSLC and using linked content is that I don't actually share that content unless I'm logged in. So if you see me come over to any of these artifacts, you're going to see some hints here. I need to log in to be able to preview this content. So any of my content that I'm putting on my Confluence page remains secure until I log in. And so we have some widgets here that make it easier to be able to log in. You'll see that I have a login button to be able to log into, say, Jira or Windchill or Rational Team Concert. If I click on this, you're going to see that it's going to introduce and cause me to go do an authentication back into those different environments. And it's going to request for my user ID to be able to do so and be able to connect and log into this. And so we want to allow pop-ups here because otherwise we're not going to get our login prompts. But you'll see that we have our Jira login prompt. We have our prompt to log into ELM. And then once we do that, you're going to be able to see how this interface gets more dynamic as we try to log into these different artifacts and be able to have access to that. And so that gives you a feeling. Those are going to be pop-ups in your environment to be able to access that and be able to look at those artifacts. Now, if we go back to kind of our standard environment here, which is my space here that I'm already logged in Chrome, you're going to get a better feel in terms of how this operates. So what we do when we include these links, we have things that are live links. You'll see this if I do a rich hover, I'm going to actually see live content from my DOORS Next environment. So this is a key requirement. So this is a requirement specification. I can even click on this to be able to go navigate to it. Or I can do things like expanded views. So instead of having that rich pop-up here, I'm going to actually expand this view. This is actually a Rhapsody model. So I can preview that diagram while I'm still on my Confluence page. So I don't have to copy over a class diagram or IBD. I can be able to just view that dynamically within Confluence, and I have access to that information. And so it allows me to be able to introduce that as well as have access to other different systems as well. So you can see that I can preview things into EWM. So let's do a quick login here. You'll see my login prompt here for EWM. You're going to be able to see that I have EWM tasks in here. You'll actually see how it updates and provides a strike through because this is a completed item to give me hints in terms of what's available and what's been completed already. So I have that dynamic nature to that. You also see that I have that same type of interaction with, say, Jira or Windchill as well. This is the power of OSLC and has that information. It has those linkages between those tools. So I can navigate back and forth if I want to. It's just a simple click to be able to navigate over to this item. And I could be able to make some changes dynamically in EWM. And so if I did something like, let's go ahead and complete this item here, we can save it. And if I came back over to Confluence the next time I did the rich hover, you're going to see it's actually completed. If I actually refresh this page, you'd see actually the title actually should have that strike through in it as it comes through and populates and make sure that we have that content in there. So you're going to see that update to be able to see that strike through, to be able to see that's completed. So that should give you a bit of a feel in terms of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to be able to make operational here, and be able to make sure that this operates the way that we expect it to. So this should give you a good experience in terms of showing how we can introduce content, share more content within here. And looks like my login's kind of timed out here because I've been doing some practice beforehand. So let's go ahead and complete logins on these different servers, and that way we have the best experience possible. So it's just using my user ID in the background to be able to log in, but it will typically prompt you to be able to access that content. So now you have a sense in terms of what comes back when a user does this. But what about editing this? And so let's go ahead and talk about a typical thing that we might do. So if we have meeting minutes is a common way that I might do some work within Confluence and want to share some engineering content. So if I went ahead, let's go ahead and just create a new page. And the nice thing here is I can go ahead and include things like, let's use one of our templates in here. So these are usually your own custom templates that you can leverage. But that's the nice thing. You can use all your custom templates that you're used to using within Confluence already. And now we can energize those with actions or items within OSLC. So this is just my editing environment. So now if I want to be able to introduce some action items, the nice thing here or even some agenda topics. So let's go ahead and focus on an agenda topic here. Maybe it's this particular task that we're doing within EWM that I want to be able to highlight and talk about. So I can go ahead and just start my macro, say OSLC link connect. I can go ahead and say I want to select one of my artifacts from EWM, and it's going to give me the dialog from EWM. So I can go ahead and search for a particular item that I might want to be able to include. And so maybe I actually want to talk about a risk. So I want to include a risk item in our discussion. And so I can include a link to that artifact. Now, as I'm creating this page, if I want to know some more information about it, I can just double click on it and be able to see that content. I can see how it looks. I can display this as a link, which is probably the normal way I want to do it. I could do it a small preview and be able to have that configuration to be able to test that out here. But let's just go ahead and leave this as a link. And the nice thing about this is now when I publish this page, people, before they even come to the meeting, they can see, oh, we have a new agenda topic. It's a risk. I need to be able to go ahead and take a look at this information. I can see details from it without even leaving Confluence and have that ability to be able to operate with that. Now, in addition, say if I'm in the meeting, I might want to do some additional things. I might want to create some artifacts. So maybe I have some action items that I want to be able to do. This is the nice power about OSLC, is that I can come in here and say, well, instead of just linking to an existing one, maybe I have an action item that I want to create. So I want to create a new item within EWM. Let's go ahead and create a new task. And I'm going to get the dialog from EWM. So I can go ahead and say, need to update risk record. So maybe there's some specific things that I want to do. I want to assign this to a particular person, maybe give a due date. So you can see that I get all my EWM dialogues. This is the lovely power of OSLC, is that I can go ahead and include this information in here. I can go ahead and add that content. Now I'm going to have updates and have these action items, and I'm creating an EWM live within my record. And so when I go ahead and update this page, what this means is now I'm going to have that action item that's live here. If I want to come back a week later and look at this item, I can be able to see what the status of it. So like we saw before, that's live update. So if this gets completed, we're going to see a strike through on here. So we're going to see that dynamic nature of that content. So as those updates happen, they can happen within there. If I own this item, or if I want to find out more, or even if I want to go and let's go ahead and open that item up. Maybe I need to add a comment on here. I can add a new comment within EWM on this, save this item. If I came back over to my meeting notes, the nice thing is the next time when somebody does this rich hover, they're going to see these comments here as well. So really what it's talking about is being able to make sure our collaboration, so our informality that we're operating within Confluence and where we can rapidly create content and be able to share information, is being formally captured in EWM, but we're not copying that information. We can have that ready and available to be able to go. Now, a couple other things. Now, these are just things like engineering work items. We might want to be able to add some things like maybe there's a reference document that we want to include here. So maybe we want people to be able to take a look at a specific module within DOORS Next here. And so I can use the same concept here of being able to say, let's go ahead and create my OSLC link. But instead of creating that link to something like EWM, I'm going to be able to take a look at, I want to select something from maybe my requirements management. And this is where my configuration that we talked about before makes sense. So my space is telling me there's only 2 sources for requirements management. I have 1 source for quality management. I have a couple different sources for change management. It gives me hints on where to be able to go find that information, and that allows my space manager the ability to be able to shape what we might interact with. So in this case, I want to be able to connect to my requirements management source. Now, one of the things that ELM is fabulous about is being able to capture how we do enterprise configuration. So doing configuration management, version management. Our OSLC Connect tool is smart enough to be able to say, wait a minute, that's a versioned asset. We want to be able to make sure that you have a global configuration involved. So it allows you to be able to pick which version that we might be able to connect to. So I'm going to be able to connect to my GC system here. Let me pick a configuration for me to be able to leverage. Actually, let's use yeah, let's just pin a GC. We're going to use a specific version for this this artifact, and we can go ahead and say that I want to select within that version either a collection, which is a module, or a requirement itself. I'm going to actually go look for a specific module and be able to search for that. And I'm going to actually bring in, let's bring in our subsystem requirement specification, and I can link that in as an element. And so when we look at this, there's a couple of things for us to be able to take a look at. We have the ability to be able to pin a global configuration. What this means is on a particular page, I can go ahead and say, I want to use, for this link, I want to use this global configuration. By default, I'm going to want to use a page GC. So everything on my page uses the same GC, but I can pin specific ones if we want to. And so this one's it's pinned to AMR 2.0. And you'll be able to see this when I complete this. You'll see that we have some hints here on that global configuration that's being used. So this here, it tells me what configuration. If I want to find out more, it's going to tell me what strategy that I'm using. I'm using a pin configuration, and this is the configuration I'm using. And that means whenever I do a rich hover, it's going to give me that version of those sets of requirements. And in fact, I can open that up and do a new tab, and you'll see that it will actually navigate over to DOORS Next in that configuration and allow me to be able to have access to it. So it's an AMR 2.0, and it has all the requirements for that. And in fact, that's why it has this green pin on here. Now, in addition, we can set a page configuration if we want. So I can just pick a previously used configuration here on here, just an easy pick list to be able to pick that when I'm viewing the page. If I want to store that configuration as part of the actual page itself in the page history within Confluence, I can. And so I could say maybe pick AMR 1.0. That means that by default, all my page links are going to be using this configuration, even though this one's actually using AMR 2.0. So if I came in here and added another, say, requirement in here, what we'll see is by default, we'll start using the page configuration. And you'll see how it actually defaults to the last type of artifact that I created. I can go ahead and be able to say, wait a minute, I want to be able to create something. I'm actually working in my current configuration, which is the AMR 1.0, which is what my page configuration is. And I can go ahead and select, let's do an actual requirement this time instead of a requirements module. we can go ahead and be able to preview. And the nice thing here is that all these type of previews and selection dialogues, these are all going to be items that are being provided by DOORS Next, or as you saw the EWM dialogues before. And so I can select one item. I can even select multiple items and create multiple links at the same time. And then I can come in here and be able to preview this item by just double clicking. I can be able to decide if I want to switch over to a pin GC or if I want to use the page GC. Any of those options are available, as well as I can go ahead and say that maybe I want to show this one as a small preview. And that way I have more content available to people as they take a look at this. And so when I update this page, I'm going to be able to see that content, see how that's actually in a preview mode, and be able to see those artifacts. And you'll see these here, they're just showing the current configuration as AMR 1.0. Now, if later on I want to be able to maybe edit this, maybe we moved on to a later release, or decide that maybe the right version for this page is actually something else, so AMR 2.0, we can go ahead and update this. Now, the nice thing about Confluence here is that we are still going to have that information all within the history and the versioning. So if I look at page history and I want to look at a previous version of a page, I'm going to find out that that previous version was using a different, it was using the GC that we had before. So that information is saved on the page. Now, you can think about that growing even further. That's where you can use actual baselines. So you can store a baseline configuration. That way, if you're using all page GCs for your links, that means you can create an entirely static version of a Confluence page that references a static version of engineering artifacts within ELM. And so you have this balance back and forth to be able to take advantage of all the easy ways to be able to create content within the IBM within Confluence, but using all the rigor that you have within the Confluence and ELM system. So it's a good balance between those two. And so that's the intention here, is to be able to make sure that we can use that content, we can share that content, and be able to make it easy for people to be able to share that information and have access to that information. And so when we're on these Confluence pages, it makes it just as easy. If I want to go over to see content in ETM, I can go ahead and navigate over to it just with a click of a button. And that way I can use my Confluence page as a pivot to be able to get into those other systems. So that's the basic idea that we have with Confluence. That's the basic idea that we have with this tooling. We want to make it easy to be able to create links. We want it easy to be able to reference that content and be able to make that available to you. And so that's really the goal and the idea here. And so with that, I think I kind of want to transition back to a few things in terms of what we're trying to do here. We're really trying to make sure we have access to that traceability information. Basically, we're using Confluence as that pivot to be able to get into that world of the IBM ELM. We're trying to be able to make it easier for people to have access to that ELM data. So your project managers or things that aren't in ELM every day, you want to introduce them to that. So they're in Confluence every day. Let's make it easier for them to have access to that. And we want to maximize engineer productivity. We don't want to have people having copy content onto ELM back into Confluence to be able to share with people that aren't getting into that system. We want to be able to make that much more valuable. So that's really the target here. And with that, I'm going to kind of hand this back over to Alexia and be able to see if there's any